Good morning. It's wonderful to be here, to see so many people that I know. I want to start out. Friday, we were having lunch with some of my coworkers, and the Bowman breakfast came up, and I said, well, I finally have my speech written, and I'm ready to go. And one of my coworkers looked over and says, you know, I can't believe I'm going to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to pay $9 to hear you say what you talk about in the newsroom all the time. And I said, well, I guess you are, and well, you're not paying it anyway, David's paying it. But what I'm going to say needs to be said, I think. 3 years ago, when the Kent Chamber of Commerce was celebrating its centennial, it was my privilege to stand here to address the Bowman breakfast. And this morning, as we celebrate another anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the Bowman breakfast, I'm back. Sorry about that. But it's my own fault. When we gathered here 3 years ago, I indulged in a bit of time traveling about what I thought Kent would be like in 2013. And Lori Wemhoff told me I need to come back to see how accurate my predictions were. So this is an accountability session. And Lori knows I'll work for food. I'm pleased to be back. Actually, I'm humbled. It's an honor to be part of this celebration. And nurturing town-gown ties on a regular basis for 50 years is indeed something to celebrate. And I'm happy to report that our bit of time traveling 3 years ago, for the most part, was right on target. Actually, I think we exceeded some of our most optimistic expectations. And I'm not too proud to admit that I was wrong about a couple of things, but later about that. And I really don't feel too badly about those either. 3 years ago, I spoke in praise of audacity, of daring to dare, of taking a risk, of going forward with bold dreams in the face of the naysayers and the forces of negativity. Some people seem to enjoy failure or watching others fail, but there's a case to be made that you can't succeed without it. Well, we succeeded big time. We're in 21st century Kent, and the view is incredible, and audacity really, really paid off. 3 years ago, when we gathered here in April 2010, Kent was just beginning to realize some of the dreams we had talked about for so long. And it was the revitalization that true believers knew could happen given the right set of circumstances and the right set of players. 3 years ago, Acorn Alley had just opened and Ron Burbick was making plans for its successor. The plans were on the drawing board for what some of us were calling the Haymaker Block. The KSU Hotel and Conference Center was in the works, and so was part of its transit facility. But except for Acorn Alley, the redevelopment plans existed only in our minds, and it was hard to picture for some of us, even when we tried, as I did when I spoke here 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Erie Street still looked like a tank trap with cars parked in the middle of it. My old office for the Record Courier was standing empty, and so was Ken Hardware. And the old sign for the A&P that somehow had managed to remain in the Kent Hardware parking lot for 35 years after the A&P closed was still there too. The bar across from the Courier, the one that had more names than anyone could remember, was still standing. It was empty. You remember all that? It's almost difficult to believe now, and let's be honest, it's difficult to believe just how bad that part of our downtown looked. It was a brownfield. I haven't heard anyone say they miss any of it, except for Jerry's Diner, and that closed in 1987. What a difference 3 years makes. What a difference a bit of time, a lot of money, a huge dose of confidence, and Dan Smith and Dave Roller might attest, a few prayers makes. Today, as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Bowman breakfast, a community event that has endured for a half century, that has seen plenty of ups and downs for this community, we also can celebrate the birth of 21st century Kent. And rest assured, that would not exist without the cooperation of the City of Kent, Kent State University, and a strong business community led by a healthy and vibrant Chamber of Commerce. And it wouldn't exist without all of us. Everyone in this room is a stakeholder in this community. Nor would it exist without the belief that things can change for the better, as audacious as that may be. We are the poster child for economic revitalization in the face of the worst recession in our memory. We are the comeback community. We are the Cinderella city. We did it. We did it together. We are proud of what we did, and we need to celebrate it. "50 years ago, in 1963, the Bowman Breakfast came into being after a speaker at the Kent Chamber's annual meeting called for greater interaction between the city, the Chamber, and Kent State. George Bowman was retiring after nearly 20 years as president of Kent State, and if ever there was a leader who exemplified audacity, he was it. That's not to say some of his successors don't come close. President Bowman transformed what essentially was a teacher training college in 1944 when he became president into a major state university, and he did it with a sense of vision that translated into near continuous construction of new classroom facilities and dormitories. I remember as a kid, whenever we had visitors come to Kent, my dad always loaded them in the car, and we took a ride through campus to see what was new that was being built there, because there was always something new at Kent State. Kent State's enrollment grew year after year, and President Bowman made a commitment to academic excellence that encouraged some of the finest educators and public-spirited citizens to make Kent their home. He made a conscious effort to interact with the Kent community, and he encouraged the campus community to follow his example. Sustaining this series, named in his honor, for half a century and gathering here regularly, 300 strong, is an apt tribute to him. I remember my hometown 50 years ago. I was in second grade at St. Patrick's School, which, along with DiPaolo School, was one of the two schools located downtown. Downtown Kent was a thriving retail center with parking problems. That sounds familiar now. I have fond memories of a downtown with 3 drugstores on the square. Jim Myers was always behind the counter at Thompson's with Mr. Young, where Jim filled so many prescriptions of that green antihistamine Dr. Lang prescribed for my allergies that my mom and dad should have owned stock in it. John Carson was across the street at Donaghy's. He was a councilman and a politician, and later would become an outstanding, although unappreciated, mayor. Portage National Bank was on another corner. Citibank was down the street. You banked at one or the other, but not both. Purcell's, Standard Drug, and other businesses were on the block on the fourth corner, the block that later burned down. I remember going to Lou Friedland's for jumping jack shoes, and down the street on South Water was Klein's Market, where Francis Klein would sometimes pause at the doorway in his white apron and just kind of survey downtown Kent. There was Han's Restaurant. I remember McCrory's Five and Dime, which sold just about everything and had a warped wooden floor with a wave in it. And next door was W.T. Grant, which was a cut above McCrory's. You bought clothes at Grant's, you didn't buy them at McCrory's. On the corner was Shine's Kent Theater, where I saw Mary Poppins and My Fair Lady, and I can remember what it was like to go in when it was daylight and leave after dark and walk out in a blaze of blinding, pulsating light when the marquee was turned on. Across the street was the Hotel Ken Ellis, and it still had paying guests. I also remember the feeling of neighborliness, community, small-town comfort that you experienced when you shopped in downtown Kent or did business there. Our merchants were our neighbors. They'd gone to school with our parents. Their kids went to school with us. We saw them in church. We knew them as individuals. They took pride in their businesses and they enjoyed helping one another. They realized that no business community can thrive in isolation. Cooperation is key. When I read stories about the Kent Chamber in the 1950s and 1960s, I'm struck by the can-do attitude that seems so evident. These were men and women who believed in Kent, who loved it, in fact, and who worked so hard to make it succeed. 50 years later, as we celebrate 21st century Kent, we can be proud that that spirit has returned. You can sense it and you can see it. It's present in gatherings such as this one. It's present whenever the chamber has a breakfast or a luncheon. Okay, that's also because Lori throws a great party and everybody knows it. And it's wonderful to behold. We have a good time being together. Not every community can say that. Not every community has a chamber of commerce that can draw a crowd like this. And boy, there are some who really, really look at us with a great deal of envy. And it's especially wonderful to behold because for so many years that spirit seemed to be absent. I tell my co-workers, I remember what Kent was like 30 years ago when I worked downtown and would go to lunch every day. There were vacant storefronts all along Main Street, and I could walk in the middle of it at the noon hour without ever worrying about traffic. And nobody complained about parking then either. A dormant, defeated town is a sad thing, and it can be deadly, too, if that spirit persists. We were asleep for a very, very long time until we finally realized that we needed to wake up or perish. I love my hometown. I am an unapologetic civic cheerleader. I love going downtown even when I have no real reason to be there. I love how 21st century Kent looks. I love seeing the flags atop the Amatec building that teach us a lesson in geography every time we look at them. Davy Tree's headquarters, right down the street, that reminds us that our Tree City is headquarters for a company that's known throughout the world for taking care of the environment, and it's been based in Kent, Ohio for over 100 years. I love the new businesses lining Erie Street. Laziza, Giorgio's, whose $5 pizzas are a lazy single dad's salvation. My personal favorite, Tree City Coffee, where I'm still trying to get my boss to let me open a satellite office. There are so many others. Popped, I love going in to see Gwen and Aaron. Off the Wagon, where you're never too old to buy toys. Last Exit Books, which is just a wonderful place to be. I love seeing families with small children. I love seeing kids in wagons and strollers and parents walking around on Saturday and Sunday just taking in the sights. I love seeing the students. They're the lifeblood of this community, and sometimes we forget that. I love seeing the students enjoying themselves downtown and realizing there's plenty to do there besides getting a tattoo and drinking. As we celebrate our 21st century revival, we need to celebrate and thank those who took the leap of faith and invested their time and their treasure in our hometown. We also need to remember those who stuck with downtown Kent for so many years when there wasn't a great deal to celebrate, who stayed in business and hung in there when times were tough. And we need, above all, to ignore those who still seem to revel in failure, who gleefully point to a handful of vacant storefronts and temporary setbacks, and thrill to an "I told you so" mentality. We listened to them for too long and they paralyzed us for nearly 40 years. We're not going back to sleep again. More than bricks and mortar, more than restaurants and retailers, we celebrate a new sense of community, or perhaps a rediscovered sense of community and a rediscovered sense of pride in Kent, Ohio. We can look forward to many more reasons to celebrate. I was telling the mayor this morning, we've all become old hands at groundbreaking ceremonies. We've turned out for more than we realize. I've seen more stuff torn down in Kent in the last 3 years than I've seen my entire lifetime. We are witnesses to just the birth of something incredible. And there's more to come. I can't wait to spend a night in that new hotel on the site where I worked for nearly 14 years. I did many things in that building, but I never slept there. I'm excited at the design of that new architecture building. I want to see what it's like to stand on the lawn 3 or 4 stories above downtown Kent. I think it's going to be beautiful. The new courthouse on East Main is going to be a vast improvement over what used to be there. That's true. And with a bit of luck, maybe it might stimulate other improvements there. The Esplanade will finally put an end to the Haymaker bypass being Kent's demilitarized zone. And the poet and preservationist in me is thrilled to see the May Prentice House being used for the Wick Poetry Center. I think it says something, too, about the type of community that Kent is, that we're going to have a poetry park helping to bridge our campus and the downtown. Almost forgot. Turns out 3 years ago, I was wrong about a couple of my predictions. I said we'd be gathering in the Lester Lefton Ballroom in the new KSU Hotel. Well, that was a bit premature. That'll come. I also said we'd enjoy a beautiful spring day and walk along the Esplanade. Okay, I was off a few weeks on that, but spring did finally arrive. And then there was that crack about the old hotel. I sketched out this vision of Kent in 2013, said, and then there's the old hotel, still around the corner. Well, you can't have everything. I was really wrong about that one. And I am so happy that I was. I tell people I used to pray to St. Jude when it came to impossible causes, but now I invoke Ron Burbick and Doug Fuller. More than anything else in downtown Kent, the rebirth of the old hotel as Acorn Corner is the most incredible element of our Cinderella city. It is just unbelievable. 3 years ago, had I stood up here and said, oh, in 3 years from now, we'll be enjoying dinner at the old hotel and waiting in line to eat there, as a matter of fact, you would have called me certifiable. That's the true Kent miracle. That's the miracle of miracles. 100 years ago, in April 1913, the people of Kent were anxiously awaiting the opening of Kent State Normal School. Their audacious dream had come true. They look forward to welcoming students and visitors. And they look forward to the future with a mixture of pride and, frankly, a bit of anxiety. I've read stories from 100 years ago where they were looking at some pretty optimistic enrollment predictions, and they really didn't know where they were going to put these students. And I'm sure that Kent being Kent, there undoubtedly were some who wondered how Kent was just going to pull off being a college town. And Kent being Kent, I'm sure there were some who were just waiting for it to fail and say, see, I told you so. 100 years ago, Kent rose to the challenge of being a college town. I am so very proud to be a Kent State alumnus, as so many of us in this room are. And this campus is beyond the wildest dreams of even the most visionary, optimistic civic cheerleader of 1913. 100 years later, as we celebrate a half-century of fellowship between the city, Kent State University, and the Chamber of Commerce, we not only rise to the challenge of the future, we embrace them and we exceed them. We have both feet firmly planted in the 21st century, and it's an exciting place to be. Be proud, celebrate. We pulled it off.